Good evening. Today is the 23rd of June 2022. Welcome to the prime time news here on TV1 for the News First team, where the people come first. I'm Sirisanna. Before we take a look at the stories that we've got for you this evening, let's take a look at the headlines.
Petrol shipment delayed. Another death reported from a fuel queue. Will there be a fuel price hike tonight? Indian Foreign Secretary meets President and Prime Minister. Relief shipment arrives from Tamil Nadu. What did the former chairman of the CEB tell COPE?
The parliament
Mobs out, protesters in. Concerns from the opposition. What are Dudley Sirisanna's plans?
On to those stories in detail. Sri Lanka's fuel crisis took a bad turn today after the arrival of a petrol cargo was delayed by a day. At the same time, a man was found dead in his vehicle while he was in a fuel queue at a filling station.
A man was found dead in a Bowser used to transport latex at a filling station in Horana this morning. The Bowser belonged to a private company. The deceased man has been identified as a 63-year-old from Ahangama.
He came from the rubber factory last evening. He then asked the two people who were in the queue to go home and took over. He was talking to the people here. At around 10:30 p.m. I had dinner with this driver and another man. We then went to sleep. I heard him coughing at around 2 in the morning. I called out his name. He had then died in the vehicle.
A post-mortem examination was carried out on the remains of the deceased, which were moved to the Horana base hospital. This is the 11th death recorded by Newsfirst with regard to a queue for essentials.
There were queues for fuel in many parts of the country today as well. In some areas, drivers who were in queue were involved in heated arguments as they expressed their frustration.
An argument had broken out between an army lieutenant and a police sergeant at a filling station in Warakapula last night. The dispute had arisen when fuel had been sold to vehicles that were not in queue. The police sergeant was captured on camera while trying to pull out his pistol during the argument. Police said the army officer had tried to allow a lorry to pump fuel, although it was not in queue. Army spokesperson Brigadier Nilantha Premaratna told News First that the altercation took place following a heated exchange between the two personnel, as the police sergeant had attempted to allow a lorry that was not in the queue to pump fuel. Police spokesperson Nihal Thalduwa said the army officer was arrested and produced in court. He was released on 2 surety bails of 500,000 rupees each and a cash bail of 10,000 rupees. An inquiry is being conducted into the incident. Words were exchanged at the Abe Sekura filling station in Gaul after the filling station management told crowds that they had run out of fuel.
They started pumping fuel at around 4 p.m. At about 7:30 p.m. they said stocks were over. Police officers pumped fuel here. Innocent people don't have anything to eat or drink. We are in this fuel queue without earning to feed our children.
Drivers at the Mapalagama filling station in Gaul last night protested against the fuel crisis. This affected the movement of vehicles along the Thalagaswala-Mapalagama main road. 3 filling stations in Kantale had not received fuel stocks in the last 3 days. At around 10 last night, people who were in queue for many hours tried to stop a Bowser that was transporting fuel. They dispersed after police promised to provide them with fuel. Drivers voiced their objection after workers at a filling station in Haliela announced that stocks were over. The situation was brought under control after the police inspector of Haliela instructed to sell fuel to those in queue from the stocks allocated for essential services. A petrol bowser had reached the filling station at the Badegama town last night. The divisional secretary had introduced a system of selling fuel based on token numbers issued for drivers. But tensions arose at the filling station after fuel was not sold in line with the token number system. A dispute arose between drivers and the manager of a filling station in Balangoda. This was after the filling station had announced that stocks were over. The army and the police had intervened to bring the situation under control. People dispersed after police examined the fuel dispenser and confirmed that stocks were over. Tensions arose at a filling station in Hatton today between three-wheel drivers and those who had arrived from other areas. The army and the police intervened to bring the situation under control. For 6 days, a filling station in the Madurigiriya town has not received new stocks. Drivers held a protest by blocking the Madurigiriya-Hinguragoda main road at the Kalagidi junction. They dispersed after the divisional secretary contacted the officer in charge of the Madurigiriya police station and promised that fuel will be sold today.
Meanwhile, a fuel cargo carrying 40,000 metric tons of petrol 92 scheduled to arrive early this morning has been delayed by 1 day.
The Minister of Power and Energy, Kanchana Wijesekara, said on Twitter that a limited amount of petrol will be distributed today and tomorrow across the country. Earlier, the minister said letters of credit were opened for the fuel shipment that was scheduled to reach Sri Lanka this morning. But yesterday, trade unions highlighted that the supplier has insisted that an international bank has to be named as a guarantee or that the fuel payment must be made before the stock is delivered. They pointed out that the government had tried to name HSBC India as the guarantee for the transaction and that the bank had turned down the request. The Ceylon Petroleum Corporation told Newsfirst that they have made the full payment for the petrol shipment. Although the minister said that the petrol shipment was delayed, his ministry announced that another petrol shipment will reach Sri Lanka tonight. This consignment will carry 35,000 metric tons of petrol and it would be unloaded tomorrow. However, according to data available on marine vessel tracking software, only one fuel tanker was located close to Sri Lanka. The vessel called Ioi had left India and is expected to arrive in Sri Lanka tonight. But the vessel shifted its route towards Indonesia this afternoon. It's the 23rd today. The ship has not arrived yet. No ship came from India. Today he said a diesel shipment will arrive by tomorrow. There is no such ship. He lied about the crude oil shipment as well. Because of the shortage of crude oil, the refinery will have to be shut down again from tomorrow evening. This will create a kerosene shortage in the country. They are yet to order jet fuel as well. They don't even have 1,500 metric tons of petrol right now. They are not ready to distribute the remaining stock. No ship will arrive today or tomorrow. The country will come to a complete standstill and we will lose more lives due to this crisis. The CPC Engineers Association said the Sapugaskanda refinery will have to be closed from tonight unless there is confirmation on the arrival of a crude oil shipment by the 28th or the 29th of this month. The association said they are yet to receive a confirmation on the shipment that the subject minister had promised would arrive in the country.
An Indian delegation led by Foreign Secretary Vinay Quatra arrived in Sri Lanka today. They had met with Sri Lankan officials to discuss the support that can be given to the country.
Indian Foreign Secretary Vinay Quatra led a team of officials that arrived in Colombo today. The delegation included Ajay Seth, the Secretary of the Economic Affairs Department at the Finance Ministry, and Dr. V. Ananda Nageshwaran, the Chief Economic Advisor to the Indian government. Joint Secretary of the Indian Ocean Region Karthik Pandey from India's External Affairs Ministry was also present. The team arrived on a private jet and met with President Gotabaya Rajapaksa. In a statement, the President's media division quoted Indian Foreign Secretary Vinay Quatra as saying the Indian government will support Sri Lanka in these difficult times. The visiting delegation had reviewed the financial support offered by India to import fuel, medicines, fertilizer and essential goods required by Sri Lanka. They had said the Indian government and political authorities are committed towards continuing to help Sri Lanka. President Gotabaya Rajapaksa had thanked the Indian government and its people for supporting Sri Lanka during these difficult times. The officials had discussed extensively on stabilizing Sri Lanka's economy and the support that can be given to Sri Lanka in the future. The Indian delegation had also met with Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe at his official residence to discuss Sri Lanka's current economic position. In a tweet, India's External Affairs Ministry spokesperson Arindam Bagchi said the visiting officials had highlighted India's continuing support and assistance to Sri Lanka. He added that India will support Sri Lanka to overcome the crisis by promoting investment, connectivity and economic cooperation. The spokesperson said Sri Lanka continues to occupy a central place in India's neighbourhood first policy.
A shipment carrying aid from India's state of Tamil Nadu reached Sri Lanka today.
The Indian state of Tamil Nadu sent its second shipment of rice, medicine and milk powder to Sri Lanka today.
The Indian Chief Minister has sent his second shipment as a donation to Sri Lanka. That includes 16,212 metric tons of rice worth 483 million, 260 metric tons of milk powder worth 75 million and 38 metric tons of medicine worth 119 million. Based on a request of the Chief Minister, we will also take steps to send the third shipment quickly.
Taking a look at a headline-making story this evening, former Ceylon Electricity Board Chairman MMC Ferdinando appeared at the Committee on Public Enterprises today.
Of the Ceylon Electricity Board, MMC Ferdinando was at the centre of controversy following his remarks to the Committee on Public Enterprises, citing that the Indian Prime Minister was insisting that a 500 megawatt energy project in the north be awarded to India's Adani Group. His statement on the 10th of June was later withdrawn by him, citing he was under stress. The President also strongly denied the statement made by the former energy chief. However, a letter dated the 25th of November 2021 from MMC Ferdinando to the Finance Secretary noted that Ferdinando was directed by the President to facilitate Adani Green Energy to develop a 500 megawatts wind and solar renewable energy project in Mana and Punarin. Former CEB Chairman MMC Ferdinando was summoned to court today for further clarifications and was asked to testify under oath. The Committee on Public Accounts and the Committee on Public Enterprises have been set up for us to understand the corruption at state institutions. The recordings of today's sitting on the Committee on Public Enterprises were not released to television and radio media outlets. That is because the committee discussed an audit report on the Ceylon Electricity Board. The former chairman of the CEB had made a controversial remark recently. When parliamentarians question him, the country will know what sort of corruption has been committed. Therefore, this has severely affected the people's right to know. They are trying to cover this up. As the main opposition party demanding the president to resign, we will oppose decisions like this. The Parliament's acting director of the Department of Communication has said the video recording of the sitting will be released on Monday, that is the 27th of June. The Parliament's Department of Communication said the request of former CEB Chairman MMC Ferdinando to withdraw some of his comments was discussed at today's COPE meeting. Ferdinando said it was untrue to claim that he was under pressure and was subject to unjust accusations. The Parliament's acting director of communications said Ferdinando was questioned on a letter he had sent to the Treasury Secretary on the 25th of November. He had said that guidelines issued by those in top political offices are followed by officials as instructions. The former CEB chairman had said he had interpreted the renewable energy project as one taking place between two governments.
Members of the Committee on Public Enterprises questioned officials on the Colombo Port's East Container Terminal yesterday.
The government had to cancel attempts to hand over a project to develop the Colombo Port's East Container Terminal to India's Adani Group amidst massive public outrage. Trade unions have pointed out that operations at the terminal have not taken place effectively in the last few months. Although cranes have been brought here, the handling of containers has not taken place effectively compared to other terminals. The efficiency is about 19%. We had imported some cranes to develop the JCT terminal between 2015 and 2019. A civil contract had not been issued over that, so we could not fix those cranes.
A
The minister at that time had instructed us to fix the 3 cranes at the small portion that is available. Therefore, we can't run them at optimum levels. The 5 cranes imported for JCT has been fixed on a 400-meter land in the ECT. We use that to handle large shipments. If anyone says that the ECT is not performing, they can go and check what is happening there. We have opened letters of credit to import equipment worth 282 million. A portion of it was processed. We have paid 19.5 million. We are discussing with the Bank of Ceylon to make the payments gradually.
we don't have cash flow issue. We could service that thing, and the contract is continued.
Meanwhile, the 10 independent political parties that moved away from the government have requested the president in a letter to commence discussions immediately to import fuel and fertilizer at a concessionary rate from Russia.
Our president is having discussions with all leaders across the world, but he is reluctant to talk with Putin. What is the reason for this? It is all about politics. This has created a detrimental effect towards the country. Even the people are questioning why the president cannot talk to Putin. You need to face these issues without avoiding them. The people are undergoing an immense suffering. Bring India, China and Japan to one table and explain to them the severity of this crisis. And why don't we include Russia to this table? There's fertilizer, gas and fuel in Russia.
It's clear that this country has now become a prey of the Indo-Pacific movement. Therefore, the government is reluctant to look into alternative methods. This whole thing sparked out from the Aeroflot incident. The government has failed to investigate on the 2 people who tried to influence on this matter. Still, Russia has not given up on us. This shows what a great friend Russia is to Sri Lanka. They are still sending their tourists here. We are not telling to surrender our country to Russia, but we want the government to enter into a proper agreement with Russia on ways to overcome this crisis.
There's a massive oil tank farm in Trincomalee. Why can't we import fuel from Russia and store it in this farm and later make Sri Lanka the Asian hub for fuel? There are no sanctions imposed on Russian fuel. Even US is purchasing fuel from Russia. Even Europe is purchasing fuel from Russia. Not only that, many countries in Asia, including India, is obtaining fuel from Russia. Then why can't the president pick his phone and call Putin about this? We can later send a high-profile delegation from Sri Lanka to Russia to hold further discussions about this.
Let me explain the reason for that. The IMF acts according to the wishes of the US, and our Prime Minister is the one who is supporting this US foreign policy. If not the Prime Minister, it's the President.
The Sri Lanka-Russia Friendship Society organized a special conference in Sri Lanka to boost ties between the 2 nations.
The Russian ambassador to Sri Lanka and the clergy were among those present at the event. At a time when we are facing serious economic and political issues, we need to strengthen ties with our friends. We need to seek assistance from those who take a neutral stance. But it is not a secret that the actions of some short-sighted leaders and officials led us to disappointment.
All the Sri Lankan were hurt due to a certain incident that occurred during the recent past. We need not go through in detail, but we immediately intervened and we prevented any harm to be done or caused to our relationship. Our relationship is inseparable, that is intertwined due to variety of reasons. The world is in the midst of turbulences. With all that, our friendship is growing. Whenever there was a problem that we had to struggle with in whatever the international forum, whether it is United Nations or Human Rights Commission in Geneva, the Russia stood with us every time, never let down us. Therefore, that we have our highest gratitude to Your Excellency, the Ambassador, and your people in Russia.
Sri Lanka used to import asbestos and it was banned after 2017. 2 weeks later, a bug was detected in a Sri Lankan tea shipment and Russia banned our tea exports. I managed to dispatch experts to lift the ban temporarily. If our ties decay, our exports will be negatively affected. 2 weeks ago, an Aeroflot flight was grounded and that caused another issue. We are a small independent country. But in global geopolitics, we need to be careful and maintain our neutral foreign policy. We changed under different leaders and we are experiencing the results of those actions.
And I profusely apologize to you, Your Excellency, and to all the people of Russia for the sad events that took place a few days ago, which was very alarming and which is not at all approved by the citizens of Sri Lanka. This mischief has been done by someone for personal gain. But please do not hold it against us. Please pardon us and forgive us.
The grounding cost Aeroflot millions in losses. However, no apology was given to Russia even through diplomatic channels. The foreign minister's statement was hilarious. Sri Lankans are dying in the streets with no way of buying fuel. We purchased oil from India for $85, but the cost of Russian oil increased to $135. Why is that? The reason is because our foreign policy is catering to a foreign land. Other countries prepare their foreign policies to meet their needs, but ours is prepared to suit the needs of foreign nations.
I would like to stress that our friendly relations with Sri Lanka have always been based on the principle of equality, trust, non-interference, mutual respect and consideration of one another's interest. We are trying to consistently expand trade, economic, cultural, educational, humanitarian and tourism cooperation. We are trying to actively cooperate with Sri Lanka in energy field and discussing various agreements which are now pending about our cooperation in the field of energy.
Now, meanwhile, countries such as Australia and New Zealand have also expressed their interest in supporting Sri Lanka amidst the economic crisis. We'll bring you the details right after this short commercial break. Stay tuned.
EVA Trusted Confidence now has a fresh new feel. Introducing EVA Heavy Flow Wings with an extended length of 280mm to provide extra protection on days you need it most. And for the first time in Sri Lanka, an antibacterial layer minimizing microbial growth, it controls odor and promotes freshness, while the extra length multiplies absorption. Available in both cotton feel wings and Tritex wings variants. EVA, leading with confidence.
Welcome back to the news. Australia's Deputy Prime Minister has said Australia hopes to work with India to help Sri Lanka out of its crisis. Richard Marles was talking to India today as he spoke on countering China's influence on other countries as well.
Our Home Affairs Minister is in Sri Lanka at this moment, seeking to look at ways in which Australia can help Sri Lanka in this moment. But for us, India is the guide. We want to be helping there within the framework of the assistance that India is giving, and to make sure that we're working closely with India in terms of how we can help Sri Lanka.
Sri Lanka today is an example of what China can and cannot do, or how things go bad with the debt traps. There are other countries who are headed that way. What are ways to counter China in these waters?
Well, I think you're right to use the term debt trap. We've seen that kind of relationship be built by China with countries in the Pacific, and with the same consequence. And it highlights, I think, the need or the opportunity for Australia and India to work together for the betterment of a whole lot of countries within the Indo-Pacific.
Meanwhile, New Zealand is donating 181 million rupees to help Sri Lankan children badly affected by the economic crisis. New Zealand's Foreign Minister Nanaya Mahuta tweeted that the money will be donated through UNICEF. The minister added that New Zealand has provided 293 million so far to support Sri Lanka. She said New Zealand is working with the international community, including with the IMF and the World Bank, to support the country. In more news, the Auditor General's office has said health authorities must coordinate properly to import medicines on time.
In a report, the Auditor General said the State Pharmaceuticals Corporation had not placed orders to import 27 types of medicines required for 2021 and 2022 on time. In 2008, the Health Ministry had spent 191.7 million rupees to introduce a software called the Medical Supply Management Information System. A circular issued by the Health Secretary in 2015 instructs the Health Ministry's Medical Supplies Division to use the software and inform the State Pharmaceuticals Corporation of any requirement. The State Pharmaceuticals Corporation is required to import these medicines 11 months before they are required. But the National Audit Office has observed that officials haven't been using the system for almost 7 years due to a technical issue. The State Pharmaceuticals Corporation had not placed orders for many drugs until they had received a written request from the Health Ministry.
Opposition leader Sajith Premadasa emphasizes that the rights of the youth who are engaged in the peaceful struggle are being seriously violated. He stated this during a meeting with representatives of civil society organizations, including the People's Movement for National Reforms.
ඉතාමත්ම සාමකාමීව විශිෂ්ට විනයක් අනුගමනය කරමින් නිදහස් නිවහල් ප්‍රජාතන්ත්‍ර.
While they had been engaging in a free and democratic struggle for more than 30 days with great discipline, state terrorism and state barbarism formed out of temple trees created another Black Day on the 9th in the country. The founders of Black May Day took a short break and came to Parliament comfortably without any problem. Protesters are being arrested in masses, ruthlessly violating their human rights. Unfortunately, the whole country was waiting for a change, but what happened to the political constitution? A man with no public base has been made the gatekeeper, and now the gatekeeper is the head of the National Security Council for the protection of that family.
රට සුරකීමේ පවුල සුරකීමේ ජාතික ආරක්ෂක කවුන්සිලේ ප්‍රධානිය වෙනවා.
Janata Vimukti Peramuna leader Anura Kumar Disanayaka met with several activists who have been remanded. The suspects include Ratindu Sena Ratna alias Ratta, Lahiru Weerasekara and Eranga Gunasekara. It was Mahinda Rajapaksa who brought mobs on the 9th of May and created those conflicts. Johnston Fernando provoked them to carry out the attacks. The police is acting in a way in which Johnston Fernando, who stirred this unrest, is granted bail. The police, which protects people like Johnston, have prepared B reports from arresting these youth and remanding them for damaging white paint on the road. Public property worth hundreds of thousands of rupees were damaged during the unrest that day. The government is taking steps to release thugs and those who planned these attacks and to suppress the youth who are demanding justice by carrying out this struggle. We must win this struggle. The Gotabaya Ranil government must be defeated. It must be chased away. It is a government that burdens the people.
7 protesters who were demanding President Gotabaya Rajapaksa to resign over the crisis were remanded until the 1st of July. The suspects are Ratindu Senaratna alias Ratta, Dhammika Munasinghe, Lahiru Weerasekara, Venerable Ratkarawa Jinaratanatero, Jagat Manuwarna, Eranga Gunasekara and Chihana Puhami. They had tried to surrender to the Fort police station yesterday before being informed to surrender at the Maradana police station. Police had produced the suspects at the residence of the magistrate and had not produced them in court. Former Minister Johnston Fernando, who is facing charges over the attack on peaceful protesters, were released on bail after being produced at the Fort Magistrates Court. Activists and university students were among those who held a media briefing today, citing that the rights of peaceful protesters are being violated.
They are arresting activists. We are not terrorists or underworld members. We are only protesters. This is a public struggle. If one protester is arrested, 100 of them will stand with them.
The government led by Rajapaksa and Wickramasinghe does not have the people's mandate. We wish to tell the shameless police officers who appear for them that the government will not protect you. Don't try to protect the rulers who don't listen to the people's voice. The police is enforcing the law differently. They are enforcing the law differently on protesters and people like Johnston Fernando. Deshabandhu Tennakone is one of the masterminds of the violence that broke out that day. No action has been taken against him yet. They are now taking steps to suppress protesters who are demanding fuel for the innocent people and also demanding solutions for the social and political issues faced by them.
Some protesters headed over to the United Nations office in Colombo today. They said the rights of protesters have been violated due to some activities of the government.
Share your concerns. Let the protesters be treated like human beings. Do not treat them like dogs. How can you pull a protester by the hair and Johnston Fernando walks in and walks out and he's treated and some of the police officers salute him? How does that go?
The Inter-University Students' Federation held a media briefing on this incident today.
When the people pushed Gotabaya to the wall, they brought Ranil Wickramasinghe as they continued to make their plans to loot the people. Nearly 2,500 youth were arrested, but they didn't arrest Johnston Fernando, who was behind the attacks at Golface. They didn't arrest Deshabandhu Tennakone, but the police arrested the protesters and prepared a report accusing them of damaging public property worth 60,000 rupees. By the time they produced the report in court, the estimated cost of the damage was increased up to 167,000 rupees. This change clearly shows that the government is involved in this. The government's plan is to destroy everyone. If the government feels they can stop this movement by arresting people, then they are wrong. We tell the government that we are not ready to bow down to their suppression. We are ready to go beyond that and win this struggle.
We'll go in for another commercial break. Stay with News First.
මොකද මහත්තයා මේ නෑ මේ ගෙදර සිංක් එකේ අයි මහත්තයා ස්ලෝන් නෙවෙයිද දැම්මේ හදිස්සියට බාල පයිප්පයක් දැම්මේ නැද්ද මුදලාලි ඊයේ පෙරේදා කඩේ රිපෙයාර් කරන්න ගෙනාපු ගම් චුට්ටක් මේ වගේ ප්‍රශ්න වලට හොඳම විසඳුම ස්ලෝන් ගම් චුට්ටක් හැබැයි ඉක්මනින් දාගන්න ස්ලෝන් පයිප්පයක්
ස්ලෝන් ගම් චුට්ටා හැම ගෙදරකම සිටිය යුතු ජලනල කාර්මිකයා දැන් රංගම ග්‍රොසරියෙන් මිලදී ගන්න.
Welcome back to the news. Will Sirisanna enter politics? Several queries were raised on this at a media briefing yesterday.
We warned you about these culprits in 2015. We told that they will destroy the country. If we had lost the election in 2015, there won't be any media in this country. My brother even told me that if he had lost the election, his family will have to go 6 feet under. Not only his family, his close relations and friends will also have to face the same fate if we had lost the election in 2015. He was speaking of his family. Dudley Sirisanna is the most suitable man to be the president of this country.
අනුකම්පා කරන දුප්පතා ගැන වෙන කවුද අනුකම්පා කරන එයාට කෝටි ගණන් සල්ලි දෙන එයා වෙලා හොරකම් කරන්න ඕනේ නැහැ අපි එයාට සපෝට් එක දෙනවා
ඔයා උත්තර දෙන්න එපා මම අනේකට පොඩ්ඩයි ඉන්න
එහෙම නෙවෙයි ඉතින් අපි කියන්න ඕනයිනේ
නෝනා ආ දැනගන්න මේ රටේ ආපහු දේශපාලන
You don't have to answer on behalf of me. We will never have a strong political leader like Mahinda Rajapaksa again in this country. After ending the civil war in 2009, they used Air Force fighter jets for the 2015 election. They even used multi-barrel artilleries during this election. They drove 8 armored cars close to our first meeting during the 2015 election. They used everything for this election. They had the support of the government service, the support of the businessmen, and even the support of the underworld. Still, we were able to defeat them in 38 days. And it took only 30 days for Prime Minister Ranil Wickramasinghe to ruin all our efforts. They looted money from our central bank. As businessmen, we cannot afford to pay the interest we paid for the past 5 years. COVID made a massive impact on our businesses. We have paid all our earnings as interest by now. We have paid more in interest than taxes. Don't even think about continuing with these men. If such a situation arises, I will answer that.
එහෙම තත්ත්වයක් ආවොත් ඔයා කියන ප්‍රශ්නෙට මම එදාට උත්තර දෙනවා. බලමු. සාකච්ඡාව ඉවරයි.
Many fish have died in the Damodar River in Matale. Residents say it's the result of chlorinated water mixing with the river. News First takes a closer look.
Schools of dead fish have been spotted in the Damodar River in Matale. Residents say chlorine water released from a water treatment plant has mixed with river water, leading to the death of these fish. They point out that they have been affected as a result of this.
The water here stinks. We can't bathe using this water. Fish have died. 9,000 liters of water that we purify at this plant should be released across 60 kilometers. But we only have 400 points through which we can release this water. That is not enough. Therefore, we decided to release the water. We heard that fish in this river had died a day after the water was released. We then stopped releasing the water to the river and diverted it onto the land. This won't happen in the future. This happened during a test run.
Project is being implemented as there is a shortage of drinking water in Rattoda. 9,000 liters of chlorinated water have been released into the river as part of a trial run. The project will be done by the National Water Supply and Drainage Board in its final stages. This has resulted in the deaths of many fish, including those endemic to the area. We contacted all entities involved in the project and stopped it. I have instructed to carry out such activities with the permission of the Department of Environment and the Department of Aquatic Resources. Projects that fulfill the needs of the people are essential to this country. However, it is the responsibility of the officials to conduct these projects in a way that it doesn't affect the lives of the people.
And that brings us to the end of this edition of Primetime News here on TV1. For more details on these stories, you can log on to our website, that is www.newsfirst.lk. For the News First team, I've been Sirisanna. Take care and stay safe.